All right, ready to call this thing to order? Roll call.
Brooks.
Here.
Holmberg.
Here.
Lund.
Here.
Kushner.
Here.
Jacobs.
Here. Adoption of the agenda?
Move to adopt.
Brooks.
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes.
Lund.
Here. Yes.
Kushner.
Yes. You still at work?
You didn't catch that, did you?
Jacobs.
Yes. All right. Let's see here. Other business, fiscal year 2022 strategic plan update. All right, just taking it.
I can introduce Marcella here this afternoon. Thank you, first of all, for being here and making us the time to sit with us. We wanted to provide a quick update on where we are at with the strategic plan. The old strategic plan we've been working from was from 2017 to 2021. So it's time to take a look at those projects that are on there and give it a quick refresh. As staff, we kind of sat down and talked about, since we are in a current state of transition with the city manager, maybe we'll only look at the next 2 or 3 years instead of doing a full 5-year refresh at this time. But we'll let Marcella take it from here. She'll do a quick update on the focus areas. And then really it's up to discussion to hear where you all would like us to focus our attention over the next 2 or 3 years.
Thanks, Danielle. So good evening, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The strategic plan work session is here to talk about what we've done and where we've been and then where we want to go. So this piece was originally created back in 2016 over a 5-year window from 2017 to 2021. So we're in our last year basically of this particular plan and looking to go forward, as we start to develop budget. So the strategic plan is a document within the budget and is adopted at the time of budget. It's also a standalone document that can be utilized for planning and identifying strengths and creating some sustainability. So there's been 5 focus areas that were developed in 2016. The investment in infrastructure, the community pride and interaction, the growth and development, regional draw, and employee morale and retention. As you all know, strategic plans include, mission statements, vision statements, it includes our values, our goals, and then ultimately the strategies on how we're going to accomplish what we need to accomplish. So the vision and focus areas I just went through. The strategic plan focuses on the priorities that the organization will complete, that were identified, and the general goals are the general topics that we want to include, and then objectives are your actual plans as we develop capital plans and just operations going forward based on what we talked about today. So focus 1 is the investment in infrastructure. And this is a focus that we want to maintain, especially with the election that is coming up in April for the bond issue. So this investment in infrastructure is just exactly that. Infrastructure is pretty broad scoping. It includes sidewalks, streets, stormwater, a number of different things. And that bond issue is specific to streets. And so that's one of those things that we talked about that we want to just leave, I think, as a priority and to try to plan that out. And there's some specifics that we might want to identify as we incorporate that and when that bond issue is passed on how we, go through and implement that particular plan for the infrastructures. Some of the things that we were able to complete. Well, I apologize. Were the McGuire corridor. We did the infrastructure that was passed in 2017 for that bond issue was done to upgrade the signaling to try to improve those traffic flows along McGuire. was one of the things that was completed along with the Veterans Road project. So those are some of the things that we're looking forward to on how we want to incorporate that in our long-range plans and the investment of those bond issues, that bond money as it's passed going forward. The sidewalks are currently being updated to ADA accessibility as we make those improvements, so that's an ongoing process. And there's been some bike trails and other walking trails that have been incorporated as part of this infrastructure plan. So the community pride and interaction is engaging the communications and increasing our regional partnerships. And we work through that and increase our support with UCM and Whiteman Air Force Base. We also identify projects that will promote the quality of life for Warrensburg. And those things, we use our website. We recently updated the website. I'm going to have it to offer opportunities for more interaction is one of the things that we talked about. And again, it incorporates the bike trails and more of those partnerships like we do every year with budget development with our community partners that we utilize and partner with on an ongoing basis. So the growth and development is one of them that we're working on to improve the ratings and rankings for Warrensburg. We've adopted city goals and policies, and we continue to revise those and adopt more as things change. We're also working on education for the community to enhance future developments and update and implement new technologies, like mentioned a minute ago with the website, utilizing our Zoom opportunities, to give the community an opportunity to participate without having to be necessarily in person. So as we utilize more and more of that technology, then that helps with our growth and development across the city as well. One of the things that we had done with growth and investment is looking for opportunities to attract new businesses and maybe talk about our housing pieces and how we can create some affordable housing and make some of that happen as we look forward to development coming to Warrensburg. And again, we've talked about the Young Street corridor along with McGuire as part of that process as well for the growth and development for the city. The fourth one is regional draw. And so this one is our partnership with the Convention Center. And the Convention and Visitors Bureau has got on their plan for this next budget year to go through and adopt a strategic plan specific to the Visitors Bureau. So more of that will come to you in July after they've had an opportunity to adopt their strategic plan, and then how we can incorporate that and help us going forward with the Visitors Bureau, and still work with our community partners to enhance the arts and develop more lots and more opportunities for business growth going forward. The last focus has been on employee morale and retention. And as you talk to most of us at the management team level, this is our bread and butter, if you will. The employees are our whole system. If we can't take care of our employees and help them grow, then we basically don't have anything and can't expect a whole lot of anything at all. So this year, we'd like to focus in a little bit more on employee development. As you remember, as we developed the 21 budget, it didn't include any salary increases. We tried to keep the healthcare expenses down as low as we possibly could. so that they weren't gonna, have to absorb a lot of that as well. And so this is something that, as we develop budget for 22, that we want to focus in and make sure that we stay within that 50 percentile range for salaries and be able to grow. And as our federal government or state government raises the minimum wages, what that's going to do to us as far as keeping ourselves in a marketable state with our employees. We've done some good things. We've incorporated the academy pieces for our patrol officers. And so that's been something I've seen done in a couple of organizations. It was happening in the organization I came from, and then we recently did that here, so that those students are basically going to become our patrol officers, and we'll have them for a period of time. Going forward is just one of the things that we've adopted with this employee morale and retention, and just trying to entice our employees to be comfortable and want to work and do the great job that they do going forward. So that's just kind of an overall view of what we've done and how it was adopted back in 2016 with these 5 focuses. At this point, we'd like to have some direction from you all, either to maintain these, add to them, do we want to revise them a little bit, as some of management has possibly suggested, or what you all have in mind as you think about the next 2 or 3 years and we get a new leader as the city manager comes in, on how we can incorporate some of this and help that person grow with us as well.
Let's go.
I always have something to say. One, I appreciate the work, and I also appreciate the narrow focus. I will tell you that I don't believe you can forecast out 5 years. In my experience in industry and other business, it's too far out. There's too much emergent strategy. It comes up too many things that it's unseeable. So a really solid focus on the next couple years, next 18 months or so is important. The other thing too is every time we do the strategic plan focus, and last year was unique for all of us, but I keep reminding myself and want to point out that we also have a community survey. I'm not super big on surveys because it's just data. It's not actually talking to folks, but consistently we've heard public safety, roads, affordable housing. So I think that all of our strategic plan and actions have to be informed by what the community wants from us, because our strategy is off the mark if we're not actually serving the folks that we say we're going to serve. So I see elements of it in there, and so that's always a focus. But I will be honest with you, when we look at public safety, maybe not as many. When I read our strategic plan originally, I looked at all of those items, and to be very candid, said there's no way you can't do that many things well. So really scoping it down to those big movers. Certainly you have to maintain, but the strategic plan as it sits right now is huge. I don't expect that everything will get done, and I think it'll be better to focus on those areas. And there's not a specific thing I would take out, but good strategy sometimes is not as much what you aren't going to do as what you are going to do. So, please keep that in mind. And then that's top level. And I guess, do we want to walk down each of the growth and kind of give them feedback on? Well, I'll let someone else start with number 1. Or I do have some notes, but I don't want to just.
I mean, obviously, I think that in that area of focus 1 there, the bridge is important. But then that also rides on the taxes and MoDOT giving us something more than $1 million. So, you know.
It's hard to replace anything in Focus One that we're not
Exactly.
strongly focused on,
Right.
because McGuire has to get fixed sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
Sooner or later, we're gonna have to get a bridge.
Right.
I think it'll be interesting as well. I am not an expert on the national level, and I tend to not watch news or television, so that's maybe why I'm so happy all the time. But anyway, yeah, I do know that you know, the federal government is looking at investing in infrastructure big, so I think we need to be watching for that and see what we could pull in for like the bridge. Because the bridge is necessary, but I also look through the rest of the town, and there's just more project there than we have money for.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know how to break that. It just,
I
There's
kind
a
of look
lot.
at the bridge gives us the ability to expand that direction. And by giving us the ability to expand that direction, then in turn gives us the ability to bring more, you know, tax dollars in. And obviously that's our revenue there. So
it is gotta be.
without increasing the taxes of the citizens, we're able to increase taxes by, you know, maybe we find another subdivision out there, maybe we get a corporation that comes out there. You know, somebody else wants to open up something next to Marshall's. I mean, you know, so a lot of options by getting that bridge.
You know, there's no doubt we have to have the economy to fuel the growth.
Have we ever, I mean, maybe we've done this, I know, so we had a traffic flow plan before we did the lights. Have we done anything after the lights to be able to know that a car can get from one side of Warrensburg to the other side of Warrensburg in 3 minutes where it used to be 5 minutes?
No, we have not done a follow-up study after
Okay.
that. That's definitely something we can look into. I think anecdotally though, we have, you know, last year was a weird year because the college students left
Right.
in March
Mhm.
and then summer was a downtime and then we didn't bring everyone back. Folks are still working from home. So I think 2020 would have been an anomaly of a year to do that. We might have an opportunity to do that in 2021. I will say anecdotally, maybe not from DD through to Gay, but definitely from Gay and up through the bridge. I think we still see some of that backup occurring, trying to get across the bridge. So, but that's just anecdotal.
Well, but we see it in both directions though, because I'm sensitive to it coming from my place south of town to like Swishers, and then when you come back, so you come from the bridge to North Street and it's just as backed up. I think one thing that we don't have the ability to fix immediately, but has impacted us is when 13, 50 and those things were built, nobody had 4 cars in a family, et
Correct.
cetera. The number of vehicles on the sides of the road has changed the dynamic.
Well, there wasn't 20,000 people in Warrensburg.
So
Either.
I'm not, the bridge is important and developing north is important, but by itself, I don't think it's going to fix all of the traffic we see, nor do I think lights will. I think just the volume of traffic and the fact that Warrensburg, when laid out, almost nothing goes through town. It goes to here, it goes to, you know. Which
Daniel,
doesn't-
Sorry,
Go ahead.
is there data available from the traffic light management group that manages all that available of traffic speed and move and? Because don't we still have a contract with somebody that does that?
We do. I can follow up with them and see if we can get something from them.
Because they could have some sort of data saying the average speed of car A from here to there or something. I'm guessing, but I'm sure they just don't push the red, yellow, and green buttons. I hope.
I know as far as priorities, I would put Fire Station 3 pretty high on my personal list. Just because from what we've heard in the past, it sounds like it's getting rough for them to get over there in a timely manner with traffic and everything else. So it kind of, one affects the other.
Well,
And-
Joel could attest to more of that more recently than I could, but one of the things historically that happened was when we opened Station 2, we were the only person occupying the industrial park.
Right.
And since then, I mean, the Enersys building was still empty. All right, it wasn't empty, but it wasn't near like what the complex is today. So that's just, and economically, that could provide more draw out to the northeast. And the last time I ran statistics 2-3 years ago, the hotspot in our reporting system has slowly been meandering its way north and northeast
Yeah.
as the bulk of the runs were. But, you know, just the ISO rating alone, when Dollar Tree was being considered, when we got ISO 2, Dollar Tree, I believe that was one of the major hurdles that had Dollar Tree go, yep, we're going there.
And
So-
that's part of the reason I feel it's so important, is because to maintain that, don't we need to kind of get some more resources on the north side of 50? Or am I mistaken?
Right, because again, MoDOT has closed over the years. Those of us that have been here forever, Casey and me mainly, there used to be several places to cross 50 Highway. And due to safety, they removed everything except the 3 bridges.
What are the odds of them being willing to put in an extra bridge near the industrial? You know, just as a
Well,
temporary.
The biggest issue that caused us issues there, as far as response from the fire department, police, and ambulance, everybody was when they closed that crossover.
Yeah.
Thereby what is now, I can't even keep track of what their name changes is, the vehicle part manufacturer on Enterprise. That made everybody now have to go all the way up to PCA,
Yeah.
back around to come back to that whole area. But economically, it proved, Lee Summit, you can look at Lee Summit, look at several other places. Where you put public safety stations, things tend to migrate there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
So, I mean, if we want to encourage growth north of 50, it sounds like public safety, which is,
that's one thing I'll agree with you. The other thing though that we need to work on, and it's more or less a let's talk elephant in the room, is stormwater management.
yeah,
Because that's the more non-grassy areas out there, the more we have flooding, and the more we have problems with that, and the more it tears stuff up.
McGuire, man.
Yeah, McGuire, that's a lot of its
is a
issues.
Small river. during the heavy
Montserrat
snow.
Park Road, you know, I can list several of them, you can too. Like Shepherd, while that was originally designed to help that, the piping leading out of there can't handle it, and it floods downstream, so that's something else that we're gonna have to, it's gonna have to sooner or later become one of these points.
So, well, do we have any ideas on how to reduce flow on McGuire? Because I mean, like whenever I live in town, well, we all do, but I avoid McGuire at all costs. So most of the time I'm on Holden or one of these streets on here getting north and south. But you know, it has, if you go on the east side of McGuire, you have, is that Mitchell? Am I remember right? Yeah, Mitchell. And it's pretty good, but it doesn't get you all the way down to 50. There I guess the city used to own some land that could have potentially been used to extend that farther north, but it sold the easement, the right of way, because it was determined that it was unusable for that purpose.
That property north of, where North and Mitchell intersect.
And now there's an apartment complex where that used to be.
The problem there was that became part of the 100-year floodplain, because the property that the city owned ran right through that ditch that's the low spot on Business 50, and that was the only place that they could go and nobody else was willing to cough up any ground.
Right.
Well, it won't fix necessarily guar running through town, but stormwater, one, is we're building permeable asphalts and bricks and cements, potentially changing some zoning. And I'll say the terrible word like gravel drives are okay. Really working to educate the population that grass in the front yard is just it just shucks water to the system, and native plants and et cetera, that aren't weeds. And how do we capture water from gutters and downspouts? There's a significant amount of roof and grass that put stress on the stormwater system that frankly, it's a cultural change. So it doesn't all have to just be technology.
Well, we have to change the city ordinances to facilitate that cultural change too. I mean.
Some, but the other side
And I'm
is-
up for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we can't do it. I'm saying it, step one would be, before we promote it, we would have to determine what ordinances need to change so that we could change it for them, so they wouldn't be getting harassed with like, by us for incorporating some of these elements. And that, I know this is not in section one, but that's, maybe you could call it the legal infrastructure. If we want affordable housing, the planning and zoning has to change. I guess the first question is, how do you even define affordable housing? But beyond that, if you want affordable housing and you also want the builder to put in sidewalks and have setbacks and offsets from the neighbors, I mean, with the cost of building materials right now, you can't have both. So granted, it's a long-term decision. What's your priority? If you want affordable housing, you need to consider, can someone do a manufactured home inside the city limits? Or a trailer park? Well, if you don't want that, well, those are pretty affordable housing. So for what it's worth, I mean, I don't know.
In looking at the first category, kind of the big picture of the investment in infrastructure. So kind of all of those that are on the list that I see there, I think are still relevant.
Mhm.
However, most of them are longer range. Like we're not going to get there given this current budget environment. They're going to be on our list in the coming years and going to be even more important when that comes. If I look and try to focus on a couple small ones that could be impactful, that might be something that we could move up in a 2 to 3 year, a shorter time frame. The ones that stand out to me because of the economics is sidewalk connectivity. That's small stuff that's relatively inexpensive, as well as the McGuire Street mill and overlay. In the grand scheme of things, $1 million for something that's as impactful to get us at least some smooth surface to get to and fro until we figure out, bridge and fire stations and some of the other very expensive kind of stuff. So those two stand out to me as possibly something we could make an impact in the short term.
But with the mill and overlay, unless I misunderstand the situation, if we don't handle the rainwater, we're not throwing money away. It'll last for a while, but the life expectancy.
It buys us time. It's going to buy us 10 to 20 years rather than 50 years if we get it right.
You have better overlay than what I know.
I think one of the items on Focus One that we wanted to touch base with you all a little bit is to develop a new industrial business park, feeling like we have Brady Commerce, and if we still feel like a new one is necessary, or if we can continue to drive businesses to Brady.
I mean, I think Brady's got plenty of room to grow right now. There's plenty of room over there to grow. You know, unless they've sold some of that I don't know about, but.
So that might be one that you see reworked a little bit, into more of a recruitment.
Am I just overlooking it? Where? Is it already on there? Are you talking about adding an additional bullet for a new?
Just a focus one, is bullet number 4.
When this was written originally in 2017, Brady Commerce Park
Didn't exist. Well, it
didn't
existed,
exist.
but
And
yeah.
So at the time, you were, as a council, banking money annually to acquire another industrial park. And instead of that being a city-owned park, you naturally, the market has created one. And so you don't own that land in it, but certainly recruiting to it and helping supply infrastructure needs to industries that might be coming in could be a very important role still for the city to perform in getting those businesses competitively across the state to pick up. So there's still a need for some of that money that you're making, that the wording may change to contemplate the changes over the last 5 years that have occurred.
I think it existing now, as well as the utilities now actually being there with Dollar Tree, I think is huge, that we should absolutely go all in on Brady and promote that.
Mhm.
You guys want to move on to focus area 2?
I think we're doing a good job in this category already. I mean, obviously, if you listen to the people, they want Target and some other stuff, but they, you know, and like you tell them, well, you figure out a way to increase the population and we can talk to those companies. You know?
I'm working on it, Brian.
You keep working on it, I'm gonna stay right where I'm at, so. Well, population of 1, I'm good.
I tend to agree somewhat with Brian on this, that we're doing pretty well, but I think we need to push out more. You know, and I know it takes people. And I'm gonna try to avoid saying hiring anybody, but if nothing else, an internship or something that we could give more. And maybe with the new webpage design, it'd be easier to give updates quicker on there, what's going on. Facebook. Those are the only 2 I really look at because I don't think I have a Twitter account or any of the others. But, you know, getting that stuff out there more tends to be, that's where most everybody's finding anything now, good, bad, or indifferent. And if it's bad, trust me, they will tell you. But I think that if we could figure out a way to do that, little to no cost, because it's pretty much inexpensive now, but say we had a communications major an intern from the university or something that they could come in here and do a 3-4 month internship. Yeah.
Part of. Go ahead.
No, and just try to help keep things updated.
I think part of it, and it probably falls in category 1 of infrastructure, but also falls into this category too, is like you said, we've got more people working from home now, you know, and maybe we see, how do we bring fiber optics or what's the internet term, the best internet term now? So, and what's fiber optics? Is still fiber optics? Okay. You know,
Google Fiber.
seeing if we can start trying to bring some of that in, because that's, you know, one of the things, we don't hear it as much inside the city, you know, because we've got, in my opinion, decent internet, but the gamers will tell you it's terrible. But some of that stuff that we can look at working with, you know, obviously that's not us, but working with a corporation, you know.
I think there's an article in the Star Journal just this week on the rural broadband initiative from the governor.
Right.
His office is working on that, and I think that will address some of the rural parts of Johnson County.
Right.
We hear that as well. I think that will address that, or start to address
Yeah.
that.
I mean, especially if our concepts of the schools are gonna change and kids are gonna do more online stuff.
You know, one of our big community partners that's really pushing for this and interested in this as well is the hospital.
Yeah.
That conversation is out there.
Mhm.
Maybe it would be smart of us to get in on it as well.
And I think us maintaining our relationship with the JCEDC, I mean, we're pretty close with them, and I think it supports this goal. Going back to the industrial part, supporting, I think we do our best work when we're supporting private industry and doing their thing instead of trying to do it ourselves.
I think the social media is definitely something that we could work on and devote more attention, and it's free. You know, if we utilize the the approach that the police have had, where look at some folks from within. Not that one person handles all of it, be overburdened a little bit, but a few people across the organization could maybe once a week, every other week, get together, kind of plan some posts, and then some other posts are going to pop up in the meantime to help share our story, and maybe reach out to some folks for some guidance on that if we are struggling a little bit. But that's something that we'd love to have a PIO. However, we can't afford it. So we can make multiple posts a day internally, just getting it out there. We'll figure it out as we go. But I think we do a good job on our website and transparency, but nobody knows about it because nobody actually goes to our website. So it ain't going to be pretty, but let's just get the content out there and kind of see where it goes.
But I mean, I think you're right. It seems to me that it used to be a website, people were looking for the website. Now it seems like they're more in Instagram and Facebook, and then that's driving them to a website instead of the other way around.
Yeah, and our WCV expert back there, tells us that we need to continue driving folks to the website because, we don't own the content on Facebook and that could disappear.
And we want to drive them there, but I mean, I don't think they're going to come without us posting on social media.
Right.
I just think we need to just be banging it and blasting it all the time.
I don't know, is the WCBB's new website live yet, or I know you sent us? Okay. Yeah, so because they did a really nice upgrade on theirs.
We let them have the food stuff.
Under identify and promote projects, enhance quality of life, what are we thinking there? Are we thinking like figuring out how to work through and put in community space? Are we thinking more community projects, enhance Berg Fest, maybe have a second? I mean, what's it?
I'm all about a good festival, so give me more festivals, I'll attend more events. I mean, so,
Well, the folks I've talked to significantly in our survey, I mean, we have a very pleased community. Despite some of the, negative posting, if you go to the Berg, which candidly I dropped off and don't.
yeah. I don't know that much anymore either.
Well, but if you talk to individuals and if you run through folks, we're very fortunate that our city rates very high with people. And so it's hard to, if you're running pretty well and you say, well, what else you got to keep doing? Maybe there's not a specific thing, and maybe we look at changing around some of the other things. We'll get to arts in a minute, maybe we do something different.
So one of the things that I thought might fall under here, and one of the things I want you all to maybe think about a little bit is, one of the things we talk about quality of life, and that is parks. And we are having a really significant conversation in our community right now about our parks department. Our strategic plan does not address anything with parks or recreation. And so I wonder if there's a place, no matter what our relationship looks like moving forward, but with the city council still appointing the park board members, I still think that there might be some strategic guidance to be given to our park board in our own strategic plan. So just something to think about, and maybe that falls under here, or maybe it falls under some other area.
I think that might be something we should discuss later when the relationship is a little bit calmer.
Well, they already
Sort
have a
of at top
strategic
level,
plan,
though.
so it's, I mean, so part of that's just incorporating in our plan, so they already have a strategic plan in place. I mean, they've actually got a really nice strategic plan in place, and you know, but, they kind of fall in the same category the rest of us do, it's, we need money to implement.
But I think that plan fits into our bigger plan.
Correct, absolutely, so there's no,
And I think we can definitely
right,
bridge the gap and invite them to the discussion, and so that
Absolutely.
they know that their success is our success, and kind of bring
Right.
us all together. You know, they offer the specific expertise in that area, but there might be ways that we can help and assist and plan, you know, for larger stuff.
Well, there's no doubt from what we know of business that it's placemaking. And I know when industry goes, schools are top, period, the end, and you've got some other, but parks and other community events have become so much higher. I know that personally, the last project I did for General Electric was putting a plant in Slater, Missouri, and we hired a lot of folks. And so we evaluated parks as one of the key things. If a city's not investing in its school or its parks, it won't be there for the future. Businesses aren't going to be putting millions of dollars, because those are actions. And so I think you're right on but I've got 30 or 40 parks ideas, but that's typical. But it would be good to put the master plan the Parks Department has and have them at this table, et cetera. And I know that I've heard that they've talked about North, which is, I think, more intelligent than West, because originally there's a concept of West Park, and I'm like, well, that's not the way the community's moving. So investing in a joint project up north would be really fabulous, actually.
I got the land. How do you do it?
On community pride, whether it be a community space or park or whatever, we can do public, private, and community partnerships, and we know it works. I mean, how many times do we do it? So the communities, you look at Impact Arts, look at all these different things that Warrensburg will invest if we bring the need, right? Or bring the vision, actually. Did that help?
Yes. Appreciate it. Any more thoughts on focus 2?
Did you say 2 or 3?
Still on 2.
I can count.
Yeah.
Finally.
the bike trail at Hawthorne and the walking trail, I kind of see that as being hand in hand with the sidewalk connectivity. I would almost identify that's probably one of the most important connectivity pieces, just from where it stops to where the Holiday Inn is. That's just very dangerous. And, now that there's a hotel there, getting those people
And
more
being
involved, I
a
think would be good.
resident out there, there's lots more foot traffic out there. People at the hotel are running here in the mornings and whatever, and there's a lot of people walking in the street right now.
Well, those are great quality of life enhancements that are not that complicated to put
And
in.
not that expensive.
So I would
And
do
the
it.
city owns all that property already.
And it's helping get more traffic to a park, so maybe there's some enhancements that we could work together with them on, with Parks Department to help, make that happen in the short term.
Now we're on public street, Jim.
Okay, I'm caught up. And I know this has been talked about before and met with different things as far as the community more attractive. Some of the simple things that are maybe easy, and I know it takes manpower to do, if nothing else to organize, but like Main Street and other places I've done, we've had one day a year of just flat city cleanups. Of places you drive down the road and this block's trashy, but this block in the neighborhood keeps it up, stuff like that, like, things like that. I spent several days picking up with grandkids, tons of garbage that it just makes things look better when you get here. Simple stuff.
Jim, on that made me think of something that I looked up for Energy Task Force on. Missouri has Adopt a Highway program, and they also put in, and folks will not only pick up, but plant natives. And, in Missouri, we have every 10 years, we approve conservation tax, where a small amount of that fund goes to putting in native wildflowers and plants and invasive species. So if Warrensburg were to develop something where we didn't put in significant amount of staff time, it always costs staff. I never think any good idea costs. I've done enough leadership. That's a good idea. It's going to cost. But if we had groups adopt, a park for cleanup, a street for cleanup, adopt a highway, and then like maybe a street of the quarter, and people get recognized, and mayor, staff, or somebody goes out and says, that's great, and create some positive. Because there's also a lot of folks that go out and pick up and do. So if we made it energetic and let citizens participate, just building on your idea.
Right,
What
and
I was thinking.
things like our sign out on the north side of town is a nice sign, but maybe during the summertime and a gardening group or something, or a group, because anytime you ask people to donate flowers to downtown and other places, they'll go out there and plant flowers so it looks nice coming to town. And this is just the foo-foo stuff, but people drive by and look and go, oh, that looks nice. And because right now there's, I believe, some hawthorn bushes or something there, which isn't bad, and some of the grasses and all, but get color. It may just be me, but I walked into a local store yesterday and they have flowers out already, and it's like, oh, color. Something that's not white and brown. Yeah. And that may be simple. Somebody driving by 50 highway and look up and go, oh, wow. Yeah.
to me, some things that stand out, you know, we're looking at actively recruiting new businesses, which we need to continue to do, but without places for people to move into, it's kind of tough. So, I mean, really actively maybe recruiting some housing investors to come in and hopefully partner with some of our local folks. But I think the projects that we need are larger, and with the uncertainty in the economy right now, I know that a lot of people aren't wanting to take on large projects right now, but a larger investor that could utilize our builders in the area with a little deeper pockets may be willing to invest when it's a very, very small piece of their portfolio right now, where somebody's not going to stake everything they got in today's market. Might be a conversation worth having. And then some other low-hanging fruit that kind of has a time constraint on it is the Young Street and the Opportunity Zones. That's only a 10-year window, which we're 3 years in at least, probably 2 years.
Yeah, till 2026.
Okay, so 6 more years. But that's something we want to, you know, capture on that benefit and spread the word now, because the clock is ticking.
Barbara or Doyle, either one of you, I know this is such a fun time coming up, but when do the codes come up again?
I would say 26.
26?
We do it every 6 years, and we just had that conversation a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I remember it well.
I was looking at budget requests earlier today and Brett's request for getting the committee going and the code books was in fiscal 24.
Okay.
And that usually is
A year or two before. Okay. I was just,
No, I think it's 26.
and that gives us time to work on the next bullet point. Adopt the city goals, policy plans to support and encourage a lot of what we've been talking about on housing and all. Because I know it's a monumental event to go through that stuff, and then our own stuff that we have through P and Z and everything. You know, a lot of the stuff, part of what Nolan said, but you gotta have the idea to adapt the regulations, but you have to have the regulations to enforce the idea. So they've got to kind of work as we bring them in together.
I mean, the
And
trick
that
to the trick to the code book, and you know, we had this discussion 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's still the same thing, is that the more you add to the code, the more expensive it is to build, and you take it.
Well, and I'm not saying necessarily add, and
Right.
because we took several codes, at least in the fire code, and totally rewrote them because what they were wanting were thoroughly stupid and unaffordable. Well, the main one that we did was the food truck code. You would have to have a rolling commercial kitchen to approve by the codes that were brought up. And we pulled in, how many did you guys pull? 3 or 4 food trucks? And sat down and rewrote the whole thing.
Right.
And made it affordable, and some of those you won't be able to give, no, but I hate to say it, but even if we don't change the codes, it's gonna be a whole lot more expensive to build for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a given.
So, but, and that goes along with, you guys talked about already recruiting new business, the property maintenance code. I've started seeing some differences in areas where that's been out there and being active in areas, you know, I don't know who's in that position now, but
Joe Clifford is in that position. He started in August. And I think he's certainly stepped up the number of cases staff initiates. And we're seeing progress area that we haven't seen before.
I will agree with that because I've seen things that have been that way forever and now all of a sudden they're getting attended to. So that's a great investment. They're working on the jail bonds. And I think the update and the implement of the new technologies, I just went down the list because I did. Update and implement new technologies, A, for us, so that people have better connection to the city. And B, so we can keep up. Because it hasn't been that long ago, people would call up and want to transfer a file, or it's only been, I believe, 3 years since you could file online for plans and stuff there, where we don't have to get 47 rolls of plans in here and you can sit on the computer and look at it. And that makes a tremendous difference when you're doing reviews. So that's just one area to where that needs to stay kept up. And yes, it's expensive, but there's no help for that. It just, the fancier the toys, the more it costs, and the more hair Gary pulls out.
Well, over the past couple of years I've been in council, we've upgraded body cams with the police department, the community development, and allowing more licenses for the software that help with planning and the GIS, I think it is, and et cetera. So those are the costs of doing business, unfortunately, they do.
Well, and COVID just, has made it worse. It's, there's so many things out there that have been identified as being able to be done virtual now that you couldn't do before. A, because there wasn't a need, or B, because nobody thought of it before, but it's more and more, like I believe Danielle said before, the hospital. I'm running through a house refi right now, and I haven't seen a person yet. And we've been transferring paperwork back and forth, and you guys could tell that. I'm sure Casey sees more and more of the technology getting used in his business. It's just something we've got to do and keep up with. And I don't know how to change that.
So on our plan, this isn't a bullet, but I don't think it's a bullet. How are we going to track and measure our success or failure on what criteria are we using to establish if we failed at accomplishing something? Because we have a laundry list of things that we want to achieve, but I don't think we have any criteria on if we fail to accomplish X, we fail. And I know in my personal life, having failure criteria is one, incredibly uncomfortable to have, but it's also very useful because it actually gives you feedback about whether or not you succeeded in a thing. And then you can reassess and make a decision on how to change your activity to accomplish the goal. So what could we do along those lines for our plan to actually tell ourselves, did we fail at accomplishing something?
Some of the items are just, it's done. We check the box, move on. Some of them, we will likely be able to look back and say, oh, we made that a focus. We captured this project, we captured this project, but there's no box to check because it's an ongoing effort. And so it's going to be challenging to measure not all of them, but some of those, and to be able to say, hey, we're winning, hey, we're losing. I think it's going to be, we kind of decide which ones we move to the top, and then we have a conversation about it every year, every few years, and we may have to rack our brain a little bit. Hey, what did we experience as success? Should we move on and divert to a different area and focus a little more attention over here?
But that doesn't really tell us if we failed to accomplish.
I don't think any of this stuff,
black and
right.
white.
I don't think any of this stuff has a fail. I think any movement forward is positive. I mean, it's just like in the beginning of the year, setting a goal. And if your goal is $1 million and you made 990, did you fail? Or did you, or did you get really close to your goal? So I don't rank it off as a fail. I mean, every step we make moving forward, and not to mention, this is, well, I won't be there. I'll be here the next year, but this is, but this is the next council's plan. And then the next year, 2 more seats are available. So that plan can change again. I mean, every third, like every third year, you're rotating 2 seats out of this council. I mean, so that changes the vote dynamics of the council. So I don't know if you ever really, I don't know if there's anything, if you took a step backwards, maybe there's a fail. I mean,
In what you're saying, I totally agree, Brian, is I think the only way we fail in this, because it's a handed off thing, and I'm sorry to say, a lot of it's dependent on money.
Mhm.
Now, we get given X amount of dollars and we get to figure out what rises to the top. And the only way you fail is if you've allowed something to rise to the top on this list, then they just flat forget about it. Other than that, it's still working. It's still on the list. We're still trying to figure out how to accomplish it. Because there's been things on the list, and when I was employed here on that are still on the list that are being worked on. The wire is one of them.
And I'll say that, from when I first got on the council till now, employee payroll was important, but it wasn't put in front of us every single, every budget this is what we have to do. This is what we have to do. So now we're in the process of hiring another city manager. So that city manager may come in and go, hey, you know what? We got employee payroll right now. So now this is the next important thing, which is going to shift, it's going to shift the council some, because now something different that's important is put in front of them, to where we didn't, I mean.
It's like last year.
We knew we had an employee turnover, but, were they not happy? Was it money? Was it happiness? What was it? And Harold was able to put it in front of us to say, this is kind of the big picture of what we got to do to keep our employees.
But just because it's challenging to define what criteria should be used to determine whether we're, anytime you make goals, goal setting, the big thing is that you need to make it measurable. And, I think a lot of these you can make them very measurable. I mean, and you're right, there's a lot of, in this world, there is an infinite number of variables that can be taken into consideration on any given subject or topic or action. But that doesn't mean that you can't establish a baseline measurement to go, okay, well, we want to resurface 1 mile of road per year. Yeah, we may fall short, but if we don't set that standard of, okay, we're going to resurface 1 mile of road per year, we don't know we fell short. We we made progress. Well, okay, that's not really useful, because if I make $1 extra next year, yeah, I made $1 other extra, I made more money next year, but that's not really useful unless I know what success looks like. If my goal is just to improve, 1 cent counts. But if my goal is to get financially independent and pay off my credit card, okay, I made 1 more cent, but I racked up 10 grand worth of debt. Okay, I obviously failed. And failure is not a bad thing in and of itself. I mean, it's important to fail. You learn a lot of lessons from that. You see where you made your mistakes so that you can improve. I mean, is it complicated? Yeah. Is it hard? Yeah. But that doesn't mean it's impossible.
But there's also another document out there that's inside of this that says, this is this, and here's 15 things inside of this one item that as we go, we're checking off. So there's your pass fail. I don't think, I mean, with as much stuff as we have going on, I don't think any of this stuff can be defined as a fail unless we take a major step backwards.
I think we're looking at today conversation, we are really looking at kind of what do we want to accomplish and what are some of those strategies towards improving the quality of life or towards investing in our infrastructure? What are some of those strategies? I think, Nolan, you might, or Councilmember Brooks, you might be one step ahead of us a little bit in looking at what are the actual like things that we want to use to implement and what are the tools that we're going to try to implement to achieve some of these goals and strategies that we're setting out during our conversation today. We do have in the last strategic plan, there is the reporting and accountability status worksheet. So that takes each one of these bullet points and it really breaks it down into very, actually small action steps. And so, and then you can see like, is it funded? What is the estimated cost? What is the recurring cost? When did the project start? When is the project completed? So I absolutely think that we could put something together like that once we've kind of identified some of these things. And not to necessarily say that we failed, but maybe we didn't make progress and maybe priorities have changed. So were there any additional comments on focus area 3? Or are we ready to move on to focus area 4? I think focus area 4 will be one of those areas where you will see the priorities have changed quite a bit over the last 2 years.
I'll say it again for the 4th year, I think. It'd be nice to see some of this art get changed around from the monuments. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing, there's Old Drum Days is getting a pretty good facelift. It sounds like from what I'm hearing, so that's positive. I'd like to see it that some of these festivals we kind of get that 12 to 17-year-old group, because that's what my daughter told me for years is, well, I don't need to go to this festival because there's nothing for me to do. I don't want to jump on the bouncy castles. So,
I know that my wife and I leave town, except last year, but we would do what we call coffee crawls a lot because sometimes it's nice to get out of town where you're not known. And,
Yep.
Different things we hit that were all kinds of pockets in primary Kansas City, but there would be tours of public art. There would be ethnic festivals where you had different food vendors in different communities. Day of the Dead is really something that is exciting. I had the opportunity to spend a couple years in Mexico and just those types of things. I consider Warrensburg sometimes a little bit boring. I hate to say that, but I'm gonna be truthful. Is we Bergfest, I wanted to see Main Street, since we hire them to help us do some, change up some, present us with some new ideas, and give them some leeway to see what we can do there. First Fridays, I have to be very honest with you, Main Street picked up. The first one got canceled, so the First Friday Art Walk. So I'm kind of in the mode that some of these things need to be changed, and maybe we hire that to a group. And I'm not trying to fault any specific, but you got Arts Commission that has all volunteers, Whereas some of these other organizations, whether it be Visitor Center or Main Street, Chambers, Parks Department, a lot of arts in the parks, where you go to the city and gosh, they have all these, there's one booth there where they let the kids shoot squirt guns with colors on it. Yes, I did. So 57-year-old child. But,
I do it too.
but there's so much, their work though. And so it takes staff. And so a lot of these are promoted through the city, but a not-for-profit or somebody else that has the ability to move stuff does them. And so if we're going to be a regional draw, we have to get more interesting. And homecoming's great because it's the college and that brings folks that are focused on this. Get the red out is good local. But to bring a regional draw, we've got to have more excitement. And then I don't know if it's here or maybe it's community pride, but regional draw. I talked to Erica Collins, we had coffee, and I talked about, when we talk inclusiveness, I consider Warrensburg very inclusive. And I think everybody knows that we are and that I feel that way, but I suggested maybe Blind Boon come out of Blind Boon Park, and how do we make, we have great veterans display, but how do we highlight some of our prominent citizens and make that attractive, because folks actually go and see those types of things. And it would be neat to see it in the public square. I mean, I love Blind Moon Park. It's great park and stuff, but how do we make some of these things, I don't know, more exciting? This, I don't want to look like I'm running down our community because everybody knows I really like it, but regional draw is hard. And Marcy, if you got any input, don't let me run over stuff because you do a great job and I know how committed you are, but we've got to, I think we need more activity and more art. I mean, I really do.
I have to admit, I didn't take it all the first one because I understand that these items that you identified as more than just the WCG and the one staff member was on. So we understand that these items, absolutely, that it needs to be a buy-in by the community. And when that's not, when it's one organization or one group or one commission, one person, that's when it drops. And if we can get the community buy-in, that's when it's successful. That's when it, it flourishes and it grows, and that's ultimately what we need.
I mean, I know developed city-owned Hawthorne lots there. I mean, obviously I know it takes money, but I don't know, converting one of those to a park at some point might be an option.
One of those could be turned into a sensory park quickly. There's quite a bit of community interest that would like to do another phase of that type of program. And I would love to help them with the town.
There's I don't know if you call this research or not, but there's a kids YouTube channel called Blippi. Just trust me, it exists. One of his videos is in a sensory park. And it's got some really cool stuff in it. One of the things that we want to talk about, Chief, was set up for kids to play in mud. And I thought that was just the coolest thing ever. Because when I was a kid, we didn't need a park to play in mud, but I guess that's a thing in California. can someone correct my memory? So there's a park over on by Hawthorne, right?
Mhm.
And then there's that long stretch where people are walking through the dirt towards the, do
That's
we own that property?
That's
right?
lot 9. I think that's lot 9,
Lot-
right?
lot
Yeah,
9?
That's lot 9.
Does it drop off right there? Like
It's got a
basically
pretty
straight
good
into,
drop off.
is there enough, because I've never went exploring in that area, like actually walked into the wood line. Is there even enough space or ground to expand that park over there into that lot, or do we own the lot on the opposite side of that?
There's some mitigation area around that. So I don't know if you could expand, how much you could expand that mitigation area. I'd have to look at it.
Yeah, preliminary discussions I've had with Danielle about that park. It is a very small and the usable space is very small.
Yeah, because it's got that, well, I wouldn't call it a river, that stream or drainage right behind it. That's a pretty steep drop off too.
There used to be a,
On the south end.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. What was?
From the park south on that lot,
Mhm.
which is still one lot till you get to the curve.
Right.
There's no mitigation area on that south end. The mitigation is actually east and north,
Okay.
But you know, some of the,
very wooded.
if we're going to put that sidewalk there, we were to make that sidewalk a little wider, because folks that use wheels can use wider. And along it, put sensory walls or sound, et cetera. There's a significant number of cities that are building those activities along existing, and so you don't have that complex cost of going, all across, but you expand sidewalk area and have kickouts and benches, and they're just, I don't know, that's probably what I ought to do for a living, is volunteer to help sketch out the cool stuff, right? But
I knew
there's-
Fort Bragg had something kind of like what you're describing, I think, where there was a sidewalk that ran down, but every 100 yards or so, off to the side, there'd be like a pull-up bar or.
there's
dip bar.
exercise equipment, which
Yeah.
obviously I skip, but you have,
But is that the same concept?
that is exactly the concept that.
Oh, I know, but I think it's Parks and Recs who does it. I mean, it could be somebody else who's doing it, but I think it's Parks and Recs. They've got like once a year, they'd have a story time trail. And you go down that trail and there's unfortunately, the signs they use run pretty quickly once it gets a little moisture on them.
Yeah.
So they're only good for about a week and a half, and then, but that's something if you could figure out a way to make it more permanent, but yet you could change the story, that'd be great, I would even say about you, or I'd skip all the exercise equipment too, so.
But I'd put stuff, those items are doable while you're doing a sidewalk project. You've already got a certain amount of sunk
Mhm.
cost. So anyway, I'll get off of it. We know, I think everybody's.
So I
got
think
it.
that, obviously, in full disclosure, I live over in that area, but I think that sidewalk from the hotel to that park is going to start to get more critical because, now that the weather's warmed up and when the weather wasn't as bad, the amount of joggers I'm seeing out there running, that area has increased dramatically. I think that you used to run that area too, didn't you, Greg? Yeah, so, but there's a lot of joggers we're seeing on that trail that, well, it's not on the trail, they're on our street, that if we can,
I'll let you know, it is on our work
Right.
plan this year.
I know.
And we will be doing it's on our ADA, part of our sidewalk budget, sidewalk and concrete budget as well. And then Public Works is going to try to lay the base for it. So then, and then the next year, we will budget for actually coming in and doing the asphalt.
Yeah, I think that, I said I was gonna get off the one. As we're building the walks and stuff, if we would make, like Brian was saying, a a pad for a piece of art. And then the visitor center has something that says, come do this. You've got the ability to do this scavenger hunt while you're in town. Because I've done that. I picked up the flyer at the coffee shop and we go around, and it just,
I mean, I used to, when it was warmer, I'd get in my car and drive all the way over to DD Trail to walk DD Trail, where, there has the potential to be a really nice path that I can walk, from the hotel.
Any additional comments on Douglas Ford? Focus 5. Employee morale and retention.
Realistically, I think I flipped the script and you guys tell me what needs to be different. I mean, that's, you guys are the ones that. I mean, is there something there we can do better? Is there something we can budget better for? I mean,
We can reserve comments until all of you have had an opportunity to weigh in towards the end there, but if no one has anything immediately jumping out, I'm happy to share them. So one of the areas where we are currently struggling in both is public safety, both police and fire. Trying to, when we did our salary study a couple years ago, we were the highest paid, specifically police department in town. Of course, after that survey, all the other surrounding communities raised their wages, and now we are the lowest paid department in town again. So definitely having some challenges recruiting officers straight out of academy, as well as some of those, 5 to 7 years of experience officers. One of the challenges that we are facing in the fire department is we're able to recruit right out of the firefighter school, but one of the things we're having a hard time is keeping the firefighters and having them stick around. Once they are that 5 to 7 years of experience, then they leave and go to another community where they can make more money. Understanding though that, if we are we can't just raise the salaries of one department or another. We have a lot of departments that, that we struggle with. So that is one area. And I think, Marcella hit on it when she did her presentation, that we were not able to do raises this year due to our budget environment. And then of course we have our health insurance costs keep going up and some of these other costs. So trying to keep pace with the cost of living and trying to keep people whole and or maybe even a little bit better. So those are the challenges that we have with morale and retention. Trying to be creative. We did implement a sharing here. We did work on our tuition reimbursement with our police officers. We are looking at possibly doing a referral program citywide. So if our best recruiters are our own city employees, and how great it is to come work with the city of Warrensburg. So maybe looking at a referral program citywide. And one of the other things that we're looking at specifically for the fire department right now is, or not fire department, I'm sorry, for the police department right now, is doing some sign-on bonuses for officers who do have that 5 to 7 years of experience.
When was the last wage study? Was that 2 years ago?
I think it was in 2016. So,
A while ago.
Greg, do you remember if you were here?
2017.
2017.
So what's the expenses associated with doing a new wage study?
I'm referring to Greg.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
What would another wage study cost us?
Gosh, now you're really testing my memory. I'll have to go back. Don't quote me on this, but it seems like I remember that one was 12, something in that
over a 2-3 month period. We do utilize the MARC, Mid-America Regional Council, and have kept up our, looking at some of those things and as Danielle indicated, some of the real interesting things is inflation hasn't necessarily been very high over the last couple of years to necessitate the up and down movement of the ranges itself, but just societal things that have taken place, right? When we did that, everybody else looked at the police, and there were some other societal factors that came into play, in that piece there that probably is causing more severe pressure with that specific area than it is in, say, some other job, within the city. But again, that's, still we took that study, the idea was that we get to the 50th percentile and we had to make sure that we could sustain that before we looked at the 60th percentile as I believe, how we're looking at it. And because that's something that, that stays, those costs are continuous. They're not, they don't stop. So I think those are some of the challenges there a little bit, but yeah, it's there's some things that we'll continue to work on with some of the things that Danielle indicated we're looking at.
One of the other things that will be helpful for us too in 2020, all the training, travel, continuing education, those things are also, I think those really do matter to employees. So being able to add those back into the budget to allow them those growth opportunities as well.
So I remember when we were doing the budget this last time, we projected a pretty severe cut in income. Has that, or drop in income, has that materialized so far, or has it been less than what we feared, or more than what we feared?
I'll let Marcella kind of weigh in here, but I think we're holding steady. Our sales tax is down, but use tax is up.
Right, and so we budgeted a 5% decrease in what was budgeted from 2020 to 21 in sales tax money. And we're meeting that budget and actually exceeding it just a little bit, even with the drop in the February collections. I'm kind of anxious to see what happens at the end of this week when we have March collections. And you'll see in next week's packet in my finance report, kind of where revenue is hitting and if it's meeting budget or exceeding budget. But we're still seeing some significant decline in the franchise fees, which is general fund money, specific to roads, because we've talked about roads and needing to improve infrastructure. Our gasoline tax is still declining on a regular basis, so that's continuing to go down as people still don't go anywhere, so they're not utilizing near as much fuel. And that's across the state. So until everybody decides that they're gonna drive, and as gas prices go up, then that discourages them from driving as well. So there's, so to answer your question is we are basically meeting what we had expected as far as revenue. It's not like we're seeing a significant increase in revenue or exceeding that budgeted number for revenue. So we planned for that decline, and it seems like that is actually happening. It may not be quite as a full 5% decline, and as costs continue to go up. I mean, remember we also planned a $600,000 hit into reserves, so we knew we were going to spend more money than what we were projecting to collect, and we were hoping to collect more to narrow that gap. And there's been some reductions in expenses as well. So that's kind of a trade-off. So you might have a reduction in salary expenses because you've got an open position, but on the flip side of that, you have overtime costs that have gone up because now you've got staff covering, for that empty position. So there's almost always a trade-off to that piece. CARES Act money helped us, so we'll factor that in. And if we get more money, I'm kind of anxious to see what happens with the Senate and how that money is going to be disseminated to all of the cities and states. But that's then based on the community development block grant formula on how much of that money that you actually get that the feds are talking about and that the House bill passed last week, so. Which I have more information on that, and yeah, to answer your question is like, we're basically hitting just exactly what we had planned on hitting. We're not doing better like we hoped. Nor, and the good side of that is we're not doing worse, so if we can hit projections, then we can manage pretty well.
Do you have enough flexibility in the current system to make the changes that are required for the police and fire? Or are we going to have to go outside of policy to get the pay for the short term to be able to recruit and actually capture those? Or is that going to be a larger council kind of decision?
That would be a larger council conversation that like I said, we're trying to implement some of these changes of trying to look at doing a sign-on bonus, to look at even trying to do a better job of how we're marketing those positions. One of the things that folks don't necessarily understand when they come here is how good our benefit system is. And so trying to include that information when we're advertising for the job and trying to communicate that when we're trying to bring individuals on.
So do you have the ability to give an applicant or even a current employee a total cost package? Okay, so, because I found that in the not-for-profit sector that the insurance benefits, that folks didn't understand that, well, you're gonna go pay more now, you may get a little more, but it's a tough market.
And too, one of the great things that we have is our locker system and our retirement systems. We're trying to carry that through as well.
I mean, something I found that, because every year when I was in the military, they would give us a statement, and that statement would basically say, here's what you were paid, and here's what all your benefits are worth, okay? But this is kind of the difference in thought patterns, is my brand new airman would open that up and go, that's all I made? I don't really care about all these other benefits. But then, my older guys who had families and stuff would go, well, that's all I made, but boy, I had all these benefits, thank God. Just like now I look at it and I go, thank God I don't have to pay for my medical insurance. I mean, well, I pay for it, but it's a lot less than, so, I mean, so it's, I don't know if there's ways we could structure the packages a little bit better, so we're attracting that 18-year-old out of the, well, I guess you gotta be 21 to be a police officer, so, I mean, I don't know how old they ought to be fire department. 18, so, so is there a way we can structure that a little differently, where maybe the benefits are a little less at this point, but the pay is a little bit more? Because, I mean, I would imagine the benefits are probably in some ways more expensive than the pay. So,
Or is there any way we could tailor it to the individual's needs? So they could opt to lower their coverage to increase their paycheck or vice versa? Is that even doable? Like, I don't know, because the group plans, I mean, the benefits providers like everything to be pretty dress right dress, if I remember correctly. They don't like a lot of tailoring, but is that something that's feasible at all?
That'll be something we'll have to do a little bit more research on to see if we can do. Obviously, you don't have to enroll in it, so if it's all option. You're not automatically enrolled in it. Loggers, that's required by statute, so you're not going to be able to opt out of that. Yeah, we can definitely look at some of these things, like Chief Lockhart and Chief Oxley and I have definitely, and Greg, we've sat down and we've had some conversations, and we will continue to do so to see what we can do to help with recruiting. Just trying to balance several other departments as well, and trying to balance how we treat our other departments with public safety, even though we know we have recruiting issues in public safety.
Is the only way to equitably do that, to have a study or to bring in the numbers from macro or whatever the organization, how do we do that? And do you have the ability to do that? Or is that something that we have to do on our own? I'm just trying to gauge if you have enough flexibility to fix the problem. Obviously, you're potentially going to have some cultural issues with, well, that department got raises, but this department didn't. But in the short term, to put the Band-Aid on, are we able to figure out a solution?
Yeah, I think we'll be able to. I think we have the flexibility to be able to, again, it'll just be trying to prioritize.
Do I remember seeing an email that we got an answer from Jeff City about public safety tax?
Yes,
We
we're
were
included.
added, yeah, we were added to the bill.
Okay, I
Marcella
thought I
was
did.
tracking it earlier today, and there has not been any movement on it yet.
Yeah.
So,
It's in committee to, but it wasn't scheduled in today's public hearing. That's why I was looking, because I knew public hearings were scheduled today, and so I was looking to see if it was included in that, and it's not, so. But I'll just continue to watch it as we go.
we did get added.
And so they'll meet this week and next, and then they'll have a break.
Yeah.
Are there any other thoughts and comments? Of course, as other things come up, you're welcome to share them with us. We appreciate the feedback. It's a lot of good conversation this afternoon.
All right.